welcome to another episode of G Presents Healthier India, where every week we focus on one pressing healthcare issue that confronts us. And today the spotlight is on cardiovascular disease.
The triple impact of sedentary lifestyles, unhealthy diets and tobacco use is creating a massive cardiac conundrum in India. According to a 3-year-long study conducted in 12 cities, over 70% of the urban Indian population is at the risk of being diagnosed with cardiac disease.
You see, Indians have always been prone to heart diseases. But certainly the incidence of heart disease has increased exponentially over the last 30 to 40 years. In fact, it's grown by 300% over the last 40 years. So we're talking about 10% prevalence of heart disease amongst adult Indians. Indians are genetically predisposed to having coronary artery disease. So we know that Indians, whether they've been living for the last 100 years in West Indies, in Singapore and in other parts of South Africa, they've all got a higher incidence of heart disease as compared to the local population. On top of that has come this change in lifestyle over the last 30 years, which has actually triggered off this phenomenon of an explosion of heart disease in this country. So Indians are like a loaded gun, should we say.
If you keep on eating samosas and pakoras and halwas and mithais and parathas and don't exercise, what will stenting do? What will angioplasty do? What will bypass do? Even the grafts will also get blocked. If you don't optimize your nutrition, they consume more than the required and they consume the wrong thing.
India has become the capital of heart disease. Why is that so? To address that question and many more issues, joining us on the show today, Dr. Devi Shetty, Chairman Narayana Health, Dr. R.R. Kasliwal, Chairman and Director of Clinical and Preventive Cardiology, Medanta Medicity, Dr. M.S. Hiramath, Director Cardiology, Ruby Hall Clinic and Chairman Cardiovascular Society of India, and Terry Bresenham, President and CEO, GE Healthcare India. Many thanks for joining us on the show. Let me ask this question to Dr. Shetty. Dr. Shetty, what do you think has really contributed to the situation that we are faced with today?
Yes, it is a big problem. Earlier, our perception that somebody who is wealthy, who is very obese, who never exercise, is vulnerable for heart disease. It is not the case. Today, we see large number of emaciated, poor patients coming from villages having advanced heart disease. I think it is primarily the genetic predisposition, added to that the habit of smoking and bad Indian diet, added to that the diabetes, of course.
Dr. Kasliwal, today if you look around, whether it's young or old, most of us are trying to suck in our tummies and fitness just doesn't seem to be top of the mind. So is there a bit of a disconnect here? Here you're seeing the number of patients come in, but yet that realization perhaps is not dawning on us. Are we not taking it seriously enough?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. In the sense that people are aware, are getting aware that cardiovascular disease is there. It's on the rise. But unfortunately, there is not enough information to them as to how should they progress. Let me give you an example. If I have my parents who had a heart disease or a heart attack below age 65, even though I may be slim, trim and doing all the right things, I am still more vulnerable than the next person. If I have hypertension, if I have diabetes, there are 9 risk factors which are responsible for 50% of the mortality and morbidity of the globe.
So it needn't just be, it's
Yes.
not just a problem of being overweight or
Yes.
obese.
Yes.
I have to look at my family background. And, Dr. Hiramath, that's one aspect of it. But what about the other side? The fact is that, we are leading increasingly more and more stressful lives. And this is just in the urban areas. Is there something there that we're doing very wrong?
Yeah, it's a combination of many things coming together. So you have a family history, in addition you have a stressful life. You must be aware that Indians who are abroad, overseas, they are at the highest risk. Something like 10 times Indians in Singapore would face a risk compared to a Chinese who is living in Singapore. So it's a combination of the genes that we carry and the amount of stress which is coming as surrounding pressures.
Terry, let me bring you in here. Purely from the way you see India approaching this issue, as say vis-a-vis whether it's some of the other countries in the Asia-Pacific region. What do you think really stands out to you, or what's been your biggest observation, so to speak?
Well, I think there's, first off, I'd say there's a positive trend, which is to move to more awareness, being able to look at both what the government programs are as well as the private sector. And I think in time enough people will have a better chance at preventative, care. I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity left for the way we take care of our bodies, what we know about our healthcare status. But that being said, the goal that we also see, though, for the immediate need is just the lack of access to the interventional, things that are needed to save someone. Right. And we look at the number of, heart attacks here in the country, and it is unfortunate that probably half of the people that have a heart attack actually die. And we know that not all those are necessarily, they can't reach an interventional center in time.
Dr. Kasliwal, I'd like to come to you here, is how young people are getting impacted. And I'm talking about, earlier on we would say, I don't need to worry about this before 50. Then it went to 40. Now we're talking about 35 and maybe even late 20s.
You'll be surprised, there was a study called the Interheart study, which has laid huge emphasis from the 5 or 4 traditional Framingham risk factors, which we all know, cholesterol, sugar.
Absolutely.
They have said psychosocial stress, lack of physical activity, obesity. And you'll be surprised that one of the risk factors said is lack of enough fruits and vegetables being eaten the whole day. Now, can you imagine, in a country which is largely, people claim to be vegetarians.
Because, Dr. Shetty, let me bring in your thoughts here. Clearly, our dietary lifestyles are somewhere going very, very wrong, and this is not being impressed upon enough, you think, amongst the younger generation?
See, first of all, we eat a lot of fried stuff. Everything is fried in oil. And also, recent affluence has shifted us to fast food, which is not very good for the health. There is no education to the younger generation about the good lifestyle, good diet, and then availability of a deadly diet. So it is a recipe for disaster.
Recipe for disaster, you've said it well, because Dr. Hiromat, amongst youngsters and those of us who are in companies, we are enforced to go in for, health checkups. And as you continue to keep taking those executive health checkups or go in for those regular health checkups, somewhere some of those parameters start changing, but yet perhaps we are not paying enough attention.
I get your point that we are surprised that everything is correct and yet something happens. And it's very hard to predict in all 100% cases who will suffer and who will not suffer. So we go over all how the current understanding prevails, and based on that we continue to treat a patient. But however, the targets are changing, like we would imagine cholesterol of 200 and less is good, but maybe 175 is better and 150 is going to be even better. So if we can move the targets, I guess we are going to prevent a lot of Indian hearts from getting into trouble.